welcome to this week's episode of ClueCon Weekly. Joining us this week are two friends, long-time friends of the open source community and maintainers and authors in FreeSWITCH, Brian West and Len Graham. It's been a while since we've featured FreeSWITCH directly in the show, so I'm super happy to have you guys.
Thank you for having us today.
Yeah.
Good. So, we could start with a little bit of introduction. Maybe you could give us just a quick intro about yourselves. Maybe starting with Brian.
My name is Brian West. I'm one of the founding members of the FreeSWITCH project. Also help here at SignalWire. I'm director of support engineering and head of developer experience. My goal is to make development of voice and video applications as seamless and simple as possible. And that is all rooted in how we started and developed FreeSWITCH.
Good. What about Len?
I'm Len Graham. I started in the community back in 2017 or somewhere around there. Worked my way through the community on that side. So I know both sides on the community side and also on the commercial side of FreeSWITCH, which is FreeSWITCH Advantage. Which I support. I help the FreeSWITCH Advantage customers with their tickets, work with engineering and go back and forth and test bug fixes and crashes and diagnose things and also help on the community side with questions. We have a forum, which is newer than when I started. There's been a lot of changes since I started. We have Slack, the community forum, GitHub. So if you have an issue and want to contribute to helping FreeSWITCH, because that's a community thing where everyone helps out. Where if you have a question, someone helps with answering the question, and maybe you have something in the code that you want to change, and you submit a change, and Andre or Dragos from our team curates those, and then that's a contribution.
Nice. Yeah, FreeSWITCH has been a long-standing project, right? I think it's been 2006, 17 years, right?
Yeah. It's been a bit.
It's been a bit. So so another thing that people, I know a lot of people try to use FreeSWITCH and try to learn how it works, and it's always been a great part of even my profession. I could build a lot of applications with FreeSWITCH. These days, how do you get started? What's the best way?
The best way to get started with FreeSWITCH is probably start by downloading the source, going to our FreeSWITCH documentation, which will include links down below for people to go directly to our FreeSWITCH docs. You can join our Discord. You could also join our community Slack. You can also interact with our community forums at forum.signalwire.community. And again, those links will be included down below. So you can engage us in all of our community aspects. We're there to help. Len and I help outward facing on the community side of things. If you have questions, issues, we give you guidance on what to do and where to go and how to report issues. Or if you have questions that are specific to your implementation or how to do something with FreeSWITCH, we're there to assist wherever we can.
Okay. So yeah, the community is always a great place to get started. So, some people might not even know what you can do with FreeSWITCH. So when I get started, so as you know, I usually end up teaching some of the shorter forms of FreeSWITCH training. So I have my own way of getting people started. But what would you recommend someone do first when they get FreeSWITCH installed?
That's a tough one because it's going to depend on what you're wanting to do. There's so many.
I think Len said something that's very true, though. Which is
what did you say, Len?
Change the password.
Oh, that is true. Change the default password. That is.
Yeah, always do it. Yeah. I mean, I think the starting point could be, so generally speaking, people are going to try and use FreeSWITCH for telephony, like PBX style applications. What you think? So maybe we could briefly explain how the directory works and where people should go to set up.
Repeat that again, Luca.
Could we take a look at how? I mean, how do you set up a user in FreeSWITCH? Like, that's a good starting point. Like,
that is there is some examples. If you go into the directory, in the config directory under the actual directory name directory, there's a bunch of files in there, like 1000 through 1019. And each of those is set up as an individual user, so you can take a look at that as a starting off point. That'll give you kind of a cookie cutter example of how to do some of those things.
I ask it on purpose because every time I present FreeSWITCH, explaining that the directory is named directory is always a source of hilarity and some confusion. Like, so which directory, meaning the one that's the directory that's actually the name?
Yes, directory.
That's what it is. So, well, Len, you've been using FreeSWITCH for a long time. So, since this aims to be kind of 101, what do you think are a few use cases you mentioned that you've seen FreeSWITCH used for over the years?
Well, over the years, I started kind of backwards. I used to help also with an open source project, Fusion PBX. And I learned FreeSWITCH kind of backwards because Fusion PBX is like a front end for FreeSWITCH. So everything is kind of in the GUI, but FreeSWITCH is on the back end, and they kind of talk to each other. So I guess a PBX would be one use case where, and in that PBX you have faxing, you have voicemail, you have user directory, like we were talking before, and then you can do custom things. You can do video. This product we're using right now to record this started as was a FreeSWITCH communicator,
or virtual communicator.
Yeah.
And that was like one of the first test clients that was written for the video components within FreeSWITCH.
Uses mod Virtu.
Yeah, and it showed off some of our video capabilities, and it was very basic. And you can go back and look at some of our ClueCon Weeklies. We used it very early on to record those as well, and you can see the difference between kind of what we have today and versus what we had then. You can see the progression if you watch some of our videos throughout that time period.
Yeah, I think the ClueCon Weekly has almost always been recorded on FreeSWITCH, I think.
Yes.
At least
100%.
I don't go that far back, but as far as I remember, even way before I took over, so it's been almost 3 years since I've been running the show. It was almost always recorded on FreeSWITCH, so you can do that too. I can add that I'm probably the one that has built the wackiest applications in FreeSWITCH, from an actual webinar broadcasting platform, which includes playing back webinars. And the reason why we play it back in FreeSWITCH on video instead of using, HLS or whatever, is that the application has embedded quizzes that pop up in HTML. And the only way to guarantee everybody's getting the same part of the video at the same time is using WebRTC. Because otherwise, when you're playing back the show, when the speaker says, please answer these 3 questions, if they're not on screen at the same time, it's confusing. And HLS or TMP, you can be like 3 minutes off from the main timing. So you're just there. Which questions? They're not here. Or vice versa, the quiz pop-ups, but you don't have it, and nobody told you what to do with it. So it's really interesting. And what else? Well, the wackiest app I've heard in FreeSWITCH was a remote court appearance application.
Yeah, that's a very valid use case. That is being used. Video applications are being used in that setting a lot these days.
Yeah, and you need the on-prem control in that particular case, or the ability to set up very strict encryption, because it needs to be evaluated by whoever's, the judge's office or whatever. They need to be approved. So it needs to be fully open source. This is actually that's really why we had used FreeSWITCH back in the time, is that was the best way to guarantee the system could be audited by the judge's office. And as a person, a couple audits happened and always went fairly well. So it's a good explanation. It's a good testimonial to what FreeSWITCH can do. But still, it's interesting. So I built some wacky stuff. I also was running one of the largest robo dialers in Northern America at one point. Sorry, guys, it's me. It's so you can do a lot of interesting stuff. So speaking of large scale systems, this is something that I think people should understand. Uh, how much resource hungry is FreeSWITCH when doing audio or when doing video, and what are the strategies for scaling a system? So that's something that will hit you, like getting my, just to get to the point, my opening for many training sessions is it's easy to make one phone call. It's possible to do 1,000 phone calls. It's hard to do 1,000,000 of them. So that's the reality. Like, one phone call is 15 minutes if you know what you're doing from scratch.
Right. The scaling FreeSWITCH is it's like it's a very interesting concept. It's difficult to get it right. So you got to pay attention to a lot of details.
There's a lot of testing.
A lot of testing. So one of the things we see, the way FreeSWITCH is designed, you can do things that are not optimal. That work great in your lab. They work great in your testing, like when you're doing one-off and you're playing around with FreeSWITCH. But at the end of the day, when you roll that into production, that's probably going to fall apart. And that's the beauty and the pain of FreeSWITCH is we don't glue a lot of things together in ways that limit you. So sometimes you have to be aware of certain aspects of what FreeSWITCH does and how it works. And those are the types of things, like we do have professional services available with our FreeSWITCH Advantage product that we sell that allows you to get that kind of assistance. We can look at what you're doing. You get access to our enterprise release of FreeSWITCH. We can help you scale FreeSWITCH up and do things the right way. And those are things that we have available. And we'll be sure to put some links to some of that information down below as well. Our team is very good at spotting areas where we can optimize. One thing I do, and this is very common, we when we onboard customers into our FreeSWITCH Advantage program, we have them come to us. We bring the whole team to the table. We look at what you're doing, how you're doing it, and then we help you optimize that. Like, there are sometimes I'm like, okay, you got to rewrite this whole thing. But I don't do that to customers. I take it as a phased approach. Here are the top 5 things I would do, and here's how I would do it. Go do that, and come back when you're done, and we'll reevaluate what the next move is. We've helped a bunch of customers get out from under some of those early architectural decisions where, one, they didn't fully understand how to implement FreeSWITCH and scale it. And we do it in a phased approach to help people scale it up without having to expend a lot of resources rewriting a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to know what although if you wanted to wax a little bit technical, I would say that generally FreeSWITCH scales on CPU, right?
It scales. And it goes like this. It goes, video is very heavy. So you're at your concept of, like, FreeSWITCH can do thousands of audio phone calls on a system, but it could do hundreds depending on configuration, canvas sizes, frame rates. All of these things are variables that dictate what you can and can't do on a specific system. So you kind of have to benchmark it within, like, your use case. When it comes to video, just has too many variables. It's very difficult to shoot for one. So you got to go for your common use case, and then your worst case scenario. It's like, say, all 1080p participants in a 4K canvas, or all 720p participants in a 1080p canvas, those types of things. And you just got to mix and match kind of what your minimum and maximum are, so you kind of know what your operational range is.
Yeah, what I was saying is that in general, you don't end up being constrained by memory very much. It's generally not a problem, right? It's seldom a problem. It's coarse. Like, every time we've done some wacky stuff, like one time, how many video people did we have on screen at one time? 500?
It was, well, once you get past the 64 by 64 or 8 by 8, which is 64 on a 1080p canvas, you might as well be a stamp collector, because you really can't see anything. They're really small. And I always make that stamp collector joke, because quite literally that's about how big everybody is the postage stamp on the screen. And it's great for the effect of getting everyone, on the screen. But at the end of the day, most people just want like the top 5 with maybe a speaker on the screen. The rest are there and can swap up into the video canvas at any given time. FreeSWITCH is designed in such a way where those people that are not on the canvas can use less bandwidth, less video, and then as they pop up, FreeSWITCH sends all the signals to increase the resolution and the bit rates and everything. It's very magical how FreeSWITCH does it all.
Yep.
And we have Anthony to thank for a lot of these little things, because he's very particular about how things operate, and it has to just work. In a lot of cases, FreeSWITCH just does the right thing at the right time. You don't have to think about it, which is also part of the beauty of FreeSWITCH.
Yeah, the machine with the 500 people on the screen, I think, was a 96 score monster.
Yeah, it might have been bigger than that. I know it had it might have been bigger than 96. I think that was like one of the first boxes we tried on, and we did some optimizations. It was rounds upon rounds of optimizations and tweaks, and it's like Picasso putting that last little brush stroke on the canvas, and that's basically how Tony approaches stuff. He'll just keep going until it's optimized how he feels it needs to be.
So another point of contention / something we often discuss is when you're building an application around FreeSWITCH, what's your favorite way of managing multiple configurations? I'm the world's biggest fan of mod XML curl. I think I have a few commits in that mod too, because it came years ago when I was working in Riot. So, but mod XML curl, for people who don't know, is storing your configuration in an HTTP server and then having FreeSWITCH fetch the config files on either on startup or when a module is loaded, or even on every call for some of them. Are there any other strategies that you use often as a pattern of working with FreeSWITCH? Like I have 10 FreeSWITCHs that need to be configured the same way. How do you handle
that? Pairing FreeSWITCH with something like OpenSIPs or Kamailio is a very good path to scaling to like immense levels. It's what we do at SignalWire. It's what pretty much everybody that scales FreeSWITCH does.
Registrations can be pretty heavy.
Yeah, registrations are one of the heaviest things on FreeSWITCH. So a lot of people offload that into Kamailio or OpenSIPs, and then use FreeSWITCH as purely a media engine for their IVRs and their video and things like that. So FreeSWITCH is really good and really scalable in that type of configuration. You get some flexibility that you don't get with just using FreeSWITCH. For example, you can move systems in and out of production by just steering your traffic and waiting. And then you can roll traffic around your cluster of FreeSWITCH instances, bring them up and down and update them. So that's one valid approach that a lot of people using FreeSWITCH latch onto.
Yeah, updating is very important. Some people don't like to update, and I can understand why, but in the world we live in today, there's too many CVEs out there, and both operating system and sometimes FreeSWITCH, but we find them, fix them, but you have to update so you don't get attacked. And
yep.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting topic too. Like, have you ever? Well, you sure have. But audience, have you ever tried putting a live FreeSWITCH server on the internet and timing how long it takes to get those suspicious scans? I mean, shout out to Sandro, our good friend Sandro Gauchi, suspicious.
Exactly. You could set up on a single IP that's never been used for SIP, and within the hour, you'll have a little SIP traffic popping around, going, "What's going on here?"
Last year, a few months ago at ClueCon, during training, we did it on purpose. Like towards the end of the training, I spun up a fresh VM on DigitalOcean, spun up a default FreeSWITCH, not changing the default password on purpose, and we started a timer while we kept doing other stuff in the configuration, etc. But glancing at the screen at the time, it took 7 minutes for the scans to start and 15 minutes for a scan to eat the dial plan. So it was really interesting way of doing things. It was, we had a lot of fun with that stuff. It's been a great, it's been a great test. So yeah, protect your FreeSWITCH, change your password. Len is always Len is our practical person. Like, we like talking about fun things and cool stuff we do, etc. But then Len's the one that keeps us sane and said, "Hey guys, maybe you might want to not burn down the entire thing the moment it starts." Change your passwords always. Yeah, that's the thing. So one last thing I'm curious about. When building FreeSWITCH applications, you often need to script logic. So maybe you need, even just a simple yes or no, true, false, check, whatever. What's your favorite scripting mechanism that's within FreeSWITCH, and why, if there's a reason? Lua, is it still that?
Lua is pretty popular. I know Brian likes Perl.
Well, in FreeSWITCH, if I'm doing things, Lua, it's fine. But I'm a Perl guy. I do a lot of stuff in Perl. So definitely.
Oh, Perl's hardcore.
I have an affinity for it, and I get it. It works really well for me. It's legacy. But yeah,
Perl.
it's Perl. The fun part about Perl, when you're using it embedded like we use it, it's you can do dangerous things.
So Lua is safer in a sense. It's more sandboxed.
Yeah, Lua is designed to be used how we're using it. So, like, for example, we kind of have to short circuit like os.exit and some of the OS, like you can't do os.sleep and a couple other things. But definitely we for example, if you do like os.sleep, that can block media. So you do session.sleep so that the session is doing the sleeping or pausing.
Okay.
And then the Lua version, I think, is dependent on the operating system. Like, you can't use Lua 5.3 on Buster or something like that, Brian.
Yeah, there's a couple of things.
Nice. Well, yeah, speaking of which, I know people try to do weird stuff, but why is Debian the preferred operating system for installing FreeSWITCH? Is there any particular reason?
Okay, so when we started FreeSWITCH, we were using CentOS, and I talked about this, I think, sometime in the past week. We used CentOS before because of the stability, but as we started getting more advanced in like video and things like that, we needed something that was a little more modern. And Debian gives you that mix of that progressiveness with newer libraries and things, with that stability component, and you can jump ahead with like the unreleased stuff. So it allows you to mix and match if we're doing some things like bring in some newer libraries like FFmpeg and some of those components to let us experiment with, but also have that stability for the community to use. That's the reason we picked it. It was a very down the middle stable point.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's absolutely. It is and it's still being very good to me. Like I've actually phased out using Ubuntu because I'm always confused with the update cycle. Like, some things in Ubuntu are bleeding edge; they're too new, and some other packages are too old. So it's hard to figure out. Like, languages in Ubuntu are always lagging behind by years for some reason, like Python or Ruby in particular, which I like. I'm the only one who likes Ruby, I know, but I still do. And it works fairly well for me. So yeah, is there a Docker setup people can use to try FreeSWITCH these days?
There is a Docker image on, I think you've published one, haven't you, Luca, on GitHub?
Yeah, mine is the lab one, so it's more suited for playing more than real.
Well, that's a good way to get started. That way you can get your feet wet and understand it better. But yes, you are correct that yours is more lab oriented. And then we have one we're working on that's going into we have a thing for SignalWire called Wirestarter. That's a Docker image that sets up a SignalWire development environment fairly easily. We're going to be adding FreeSWITCH to that soon as well. So we're going to have that area where you can play with not just all of the stuff with SignalWire, but all the stuff with FreeSWITCH. So you can like mix and match and melt the two together however you see fit.
Yeah, it is good. Well, let's. Yeah, speaking of which, last question. SignalWire. It's great, and we use it a lot. What is the is there a way to connect your FreeSWITCH to SignalWire easily so that you can start using our services?
You could use a SIP endpoint. It's probably the most common. There is mod SignalWire also. That should configure all the profiles and gateway, so you can make and receive calls.
Good. And there's also a mod SignalWire, right?
Yeah, the mod SignalWire.
Of course, uses a token. So you set up a token in your account. Yeah, there's one thing you need to know. Installing FreeSWITCH does require having a SignalWire account right now, right? We just use for accounting purposes and to avoid abuse of the package installation. Well, source install, you can just do it.
Yep. Yeah, GitHub, you can get the source and not use a token. But on the compile, like you said, there is a token. There were different reasons for that, but just one of those things, I guess.
Cool. Well, then, thank you very much for the 101. It's a good starting point. There will be lots on the more than usual number of links on the video description because we need to point you around to lots of things. Any questions you have about FreeSWITCH, join the Slack, join the Discord, send us an email. Someone will certainly help you. And come meet us at conferences. I think there's someone from the team at API World in DC, and someone is in API World is in Santa Clara, California, so it's a different place. And there's someone from the team at Von Evolution in New York in the next month or so. Plus, we're always around. So, and come see us at ClueCon next year. Yeah, reminder: there's a early bird sale of tickets going on for ClueCon for next year. It's going to be in Chicago in August, and it's also going to be at the Drake Hotel again. And it's going to be the 25th, by the way. So it's going to be a lot of celebrations and lots of fun. And we'll bring. I know some of the teams, myself included, are bringing their families, so we're having like a big family party of the of 25th anniversary of ClueCon, which is going to be very fun. And well, that's it. Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Len, for joining us today. And FreeSWITCH, use it, try it, let us know.
All right. Thank you, guys.
And for the rest of the people, I'll see you next week. Goodbye.